In today's episode, we're talking about the truth of escapism through reading. And I want to start by posing a question about productivity. How much pressure do you feel like you're under to be productive? If you stay until the end of today's episode, you'll leave with a better idea of how to get the most out of the books you read, and also how to get outside of what I'll call the productivity trap of reading. But what do we mean? What do we mean? I think oftentimes we're made to believe that the juice, so to speak, should be squeezed out of every second of every day. That if we're not going full throttle 24/7, then we're somehow dropping the ball or missing out on an opportunity. It seems like almost everywhere you look, there is an obsession with productivity. And it's pretty obvious why. I'm not going to pretend like I don't understand why being productive is worthwhile. The survival of the human species does, after all, depend on the production of things. Very big brain, deep stuff happening here. But I don't have time to get into all of that talk about things and resources. We're talking about reading today. So here's the meat of it. If you want to find a way to make every moment of your life as productive as possible, more power to you. I say go for it. We wish you nothing but the best. But remember these words of Dostoevsky's, which he wrote in Notes from Underground. Even if man really were nothing but a piano key, he would not become reasonable, but would purposely do something perverse out of simple ingratitude, simply to gain his point. So for anyone who doesn't know, human beings are not machines. We are chaotic beasts who need balance. And maybe there is a select group of people who can be productive 16 hours a day, 365 days a year, but most people can't, and I certainly cannot. I think most people need a healthy balance of productive and unproductive time that's unique to them, which brings me to the subject of escapism through reading. In one way or another, we all need escapism. We all need some form of escape. We need something to help us relax and unwind. Because almost paradoxically, and this is really what today's video is all about, being unproductive is as much a part of being productive as being productive is. So let's dive in, and as always, let's help you get the most out of the books that you give your time to. Moby and I think there's a lot that people get wrong about reading as escapism. As I see it, reading has never been immune to what I'll call the productivity problem. We read to learn, obviously, so it makes sense to try to be as productive as possible when we do it. But generations of people have struggled to separate reading for escape from reading to learn. And I think it's a distinction that's worth making. Generally speaking, there's a distinction between serious reading and light reading, between literary and commercial. Serious reading, I would say, exposes the harsh realities of life, or it presents the reader with some profound philosophy, while less serious or lighter fiction does the opposite, at least in theory, which, is crazy, right? Because I can't imagine why anybody would want to casually enjoy an afternoon when they could be undertaking an epically difficult novel like Ulysses, right? Why wouldn't you want to read a book that's gonna give you a headache? Doesn't that sound fun? Doesn't that sound like a fun way to enjoy your afternoon? Obviously, I am joking. But I think this distinction, especially in the present information age when we're always having content shot into our brains at light speed, this distinction is what people tend to get wrong about escapism through reading. It's easy to think about reading from a productivity standpoint. There have been plenty of times in my life when I've thought, what is the point of reading if I'm not learning something new, if I'm not getting something profound, if I'm not tapping into some new philosophy or lesson about the world? But the truth is that reading as escapism is about getting away from what I'll call the productivity rat race in order to recharge. And when you do it correctly, when you do it genuinely, when you genuinely give your time to a text that you're interested in for your interests' sake, those theoretical, practical benefits come as a residual effect anyway. And now I want to share a pretty well-known Neil Gaiman quote, which I think reframes what I've said perfectly. People talk about escapism as if it's a bad thing. Once you've escaped, once you come back, the world is not the same as when you left it. You come back to it with skills, with weapons, and with knowledge you didn't have before. Escapism is valuable in and of itself because it is intentionally unproductive. And this brings us to what we'll call the second trap of reading as escapism. Okay, so you understand that you should be perfectly happy to embrace reading as an escape from the constant pressures of life to be productive. That's great, but it will lead you directly to another trap, which is overthinking the how of escapism. There's nothing wrong with looking up a quick list of great escapist recommendations. If you do that and you find books you love, keep doing it by all means. My point is simply that it's important to take a broad view of reading as escapism. And this opens the door for us to consider what escapism actually is. Simply because a novel isn't set in a different world doesn't mean that it can't help you escape. And the opposite is true. Reading as escapism depends upon your interests. So when we talk about escapism, we need to talk about it in a way that's general. And now I want to share with you words that Tolkien once wrote. Why should a man be scorned if, finding himself in prison, he tries to get out and go home? Or if, when he cannot do so, he thinks and talks about other topics than jailers and prison walls? The world outside has not become less real because the prisoner cannot see it. The detailed and vividly constructed worlds of a fantasy novel might help you make a more explicit, literal escape from reality. Engaging detective stories, thrillers, romance novels, and genre fiction more generally can all do the same. But I also think that you should think about reading in general as a form of escape, rather than always trying to find or seek out some secret syllabus of escapist reads. Because to seek out something other than your own interests over and over again, in my opinion, is to run the risk of slipping back into what I mentioned at the start of today's video, which is the productivity trap. In my eyes, any book that takes your mind off the everyday stresses of life counts as an escapist read. And if it isn't already obvious by now, I mean that in a good way. I think it's important not to let a barrage of social media posts about like grind sets and side hustles and productivity cloud your vision on this subject. Enjoy your escapism as you see fit. And if you want to learn more about this subject, I hope you'll check out this playlist, which has all of my videos about reading and writing and thinking and learning. And if you have specific book recommendations that helped you escape the stresses of life, I hope you'll share them with me in the comments down below. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for picking my video out of all of the other videos. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.